Welcome to Chalk It Out, where we spill the tea on what it's really like to be an educator. Hi, I'm Mallory.
And I'm Greta. All right, welcome back. Today we're talking about parent-teacher conferences.
Oh, yes. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, these usually occur in the fall and then usually in the springtime. So there's two different ones. Most school districts will block out a couple of days where parents can come in and then teachers get those 2 days off because they've had to stay after school for 4 hours each day.
Yes, until like 7 or 7:30 at night, which is so
long.
When I was a kid, we had half days.
Mm-hmm.
I remember getting off early, and we had parent-teacher conferences during the day.
I know.
That was nice.
Yes. So my youngest, their school, that's what they do. This year they took off 2 days. They got 2 days off for fall break. And then parents had to just come in either remotely or in person. From I think they started at 8 to 3. So
that's cool. They offered a remote option.
I agree.
You don't necessarily need to be there in person.
And they're so quick. It's 10 to 15 minutes max.
True.
So
yeah, I don't know why that. I feel like that should be like something left over from COVID that we
continue. Maybe we'd get more people.
We didn't even do parent-teacher conferences during COVID.
No, I forgot about that. But yeah, we did not.
Interesting. And what a missed opportunity.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about some tips for teachers and then also thinking about some questions that parents could ask.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the first thing I have for the fall conferences is to make sure everyone has their little binder with some different student work. So there was always a writing sample. And then sometimes I would actually print the CMAS exemplar and put that in there so that parents know this is what's expected by the end of the school year. Parents are super shocked by that because the writing nowadays is intense compared to when we were younger.
I love the idea of having the exemplar in there. I never did that, but I wish that I had.
Yes. And then usually I'll have some kind of math assessment, the most recent unit assessment in there. I would have, if you use iReady, whatever your school district uses for that diagnostic assessment, have those printed off too because it has the percentile and where they are. So I think that's very helpful. And then I would print off some comprehension questions for recommendations, like if they would read every night 20 to 30 minutes, here's some questions you can ask your child about the book they're reading.
Yeah, I definitely did the comprehension questions thing. I was not as organized as you in terms of having a binder for all my kids.
Yes.
But I did make sure that week I had samples to show parents. If I needed to show them something from their student workbook, I would. Or I would say, this is where they are specifically in their understanding. Or like, this is a strategy they're using, and this is the strategy we're trying to get them to use. Or I would print out the Bridges unit family letter that shows like this is what we're working on.
Okay.
And then I wouldn't print out the iReady stuff, but I would always pull it up on my computer and show parents that way. Okay. And then I think something that I did starting out that I don't recommend is I would take the report card and I would go through the whole report card and be like, they got to be proficient in this, they got to unsatisfactory in this, and kind of explain why. But I don't really think that was the best use of time. I think it was helpful in some regards because there were some families that didn't really understand what the report card meant. Like, what's the U? What's the P? What's the PP? Like, what do those things mean? So I think it was helpful in some ways, but I think when I got really specific and I want to make sure I show work and like the strategies they're using, that's when I found the most success with conferences.
Okay. I always use a one pager and it would have what's my strength, what's something I'm working on. Usually something about SEL was in there. So like, do they participate? Are they following the classroom rules? Are they respectful? I think it was just like 3 things and would rate the kid on that. And then there was a little box. I think I got it from like Teachers Pay Teachers, honestly, or I don't remember where I had found it, but it would have reading, writing, and math. So I did put on there if they were proficient or beginning understanding, just so parents kind of were aware on like, this is where they're at. Here's where I'm helping them in the classroom. Here's what you can do at home. So hopefully, their scores would go up a little bit, but I think it's hard as a parent just to get the report card and be shocked.
Yeah. And I think that ours were always tied to the report card, which is why we gave the report card out at conferences. Okay. So that's like kind of why I went through the report card.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I think the one pager is a really good idea because the report card's confusing and not all the indicators make sense. And I don't know.
Yeah. Mine was just like literally just a math score, a writing score, and a reading score. So you don't have like all the standards broken down. But I mean, if you're showing them student work, they should be aware of.
Well, yeah. So here's a work sample. Here's the rubric. Here's the expectation. That speaks volumes.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think that's really good tips for teachers.
I think always starting off with some strengths, right?
Yes.
Like, this is what I love about your child, and give some examples. I know we've talked about like a concrete example to give to parents 100%. And not just like they're so nice. Like, you need a specific thing that they did to show they were respectful.
100%.
So you can build that trust before you're just like, oh, and by the way, they're, beginning understanding on all of this. So
yeah. And I think anytime you can just connect with the family and get to know their culture or their cultural background, how does school reflect their cultural background? How can school better reflect their cultural background? Like, what traditions do you have that we can integrate into our like classroom? Or I don't know, how do you teach this at home? Like, how
what's
can
helpful?
we kind of bridge the gap here? Anytime you like ask questions, just like listen.
Yes,
it's good.
And to hear them. Oh, I understand where you're coming from. Sometimes parents just want to be heard.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I always think of brand new teachers, and especially nowadays with new teachers probably don't make phone calls anymore. They're more texting. And so I think helping new teachers with parent-teacher conferences, what this could sound like, and having them practice.
Yeah.
Because I've had new teachers who even making a phone call to a parent is really high anxiety. So it's making sure they're able just to communicate and be like, start with a strength, like kind of script it almost at first, and then it'll become natural.
Yeah.
But a lot of new teachers fresh out of college, it's intimidating to be around some parents. And I think sometimes they're like, what if they're upset? So it's just how to handle all
Especially
of that.
when you're like younger than the parent.
Yes.
But yeah, I think the other thing is like start with a strength. And then I would always start with, how do you feel the school year's going?
Yes.
And really get their perspective of it before you even launch into anything.
And hopefully if there are some behavior things you want to address, you've made some positive phone calls home and built that communication. So it's not just, oh, here, by the way, they're not joining us. They're constantly yelling out. So
parent-teacher conferences should not be the first time they hear about a
they
major behavior
definitely
issue.
not. Or academics, honestly. Hopefully you've sent some grades home so they're prepared.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah.
And then, so my youngest two, their school, they have in the springtime, they have student-led conferences.
Okay.
And so those just happen, I think it's like for 2 or 3 hours after school, and parents can come and go. And the student actually presents their conferences. And I love that because they have this binder of the whole year of all their work, and you can see the growth. A lot of teachers will practice with the students at school on sentence frames, so they make sure they go over everything. And so it's like this whole protocol that a student will go through with you.
I think those are really powerful. I think they take a lot of time to prepare, but I think it's really valuable because students get this way to reflect on their own learning and a way to honestly say, this is where I'm at. This is my next step.
Yeah.
All of this is okay. It's okay to have a next step. It's okay to not be at a certain point.
Yeah.
And just be able to articulate that to your family.
And and the ones that they have like their own rubric where they kind of go through different things like, do I feel like I participate, or and all these different things, so then they actually score themselves. It's fascinating to see where a kid puts themselves.
Yeah.
Especially mine. So, and I would say most of the time they're pretty honest and they know. So I think it's really cool.
I've definitely had some kids before that have rated themselves. I'm like, that's so interesting.
Yeah. Can you prove that to me right here? Maybe we need to adjust that a little. But yeah, student-led conferences are really nice. I think it's nice for teachers because by the end of the year, it's like, okay, yes, I think a student can do this. Like, we don't need to sit down for the last couple of months, and go over things.
Yeah.
But again, it depends. And also I've noticed the traditional way, we don't have nearly as many families joining in the springtime versus fall.
Yeah.
I think everyone's kind of checked out. So
true.
Thinking about how to make it a little more creative and fun so more people will attend.
Yeah.
in the springtime.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you think are some good questions that parents can ask going into conferences?
Yes. The teachers will usually answer academically, but like that social emotional piece, I always like to ask about that, especially I have very shy kids. And so tell me about how they participate. Are they participating in a whole group? And so my two youngest, they're so shy, and Ezekiel needs a lot of think time. So it was good for me to ask that because they said he will, but we have to do like our equity sticks and we have to make sure we give him like a minute to think. And I was like, interesting, because I didn't know that about him. He's usually pretty fast, but I think his is more like a perfectionist and wanting to make sure it's right.
Yeah.
So we're trying to find that balance. Like, it's actually a good thing. It's okay if you don't get it right. Right. You learn from that. So that's where we're at with him. So I would say something about like participation. Friendship, I think, is really important, especially with like that 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade range, just because of COVID. A lot of introverts, and they don't really want to socialize as much as other kids. And so just making sure.
Is my child happy?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that's what I always turn to as a parent.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think another good question would just be like, how can I support at home? And then going off of that, especially if a teacher has come to you with some academic needs, you could say, well, what instructional strategies are you doing, and how can I take those and leverage them at home? Or like, how can I piggyback off of what you're doing? So then you get more information on like specifically what the teacher is doing, and then you can then take that and reiterate it at home.
Yes, perfect. And I've had parents ask me, can I have some extra work around, say they were having a hard time with like multiplication and division. Do you have anything that you can print for me that we can just do, like 1 page once a week or something? And so for those family, I have found some different things to print. Maybe it was handwriting, like a handwriting book. It just depends.
Yeah.
But a lot of parents really do want to help their kid and help them grow. So just being creative, not saying you have to make something for your whole class, but if there's a certain area that a kid needs help with and the parent asks for it, it's like, I don't have a problem spending 10 minutes to make you a little packet.
Totally. And then I think also just making sure you're connected with Google Classroom or Class Dojo, or maybe like what behavior management system do you have? Like, is it online? Can I connect to it? Do you have Google Classroom? Can I connect to that? Like, can I see my students' work? Or like, how often do you send home work? Maybe your kid isn't actually bringing home the stuff that your teacher sends. Yeah. Because I think that like things get lost in backpacks, or sometimes kids are sneaky and throw stuff away before it gets home.
Yes.
So just making sure you're on the same page with the teacher. When are you sending stuff home? What should I be looking for? Like, am I missing anything?
Yeah, for sure. That is so true. I also make sure that they are connected to either, like if you use iReady or whatever platform that you'll use, just not that they sit down and actually do the work with the student, because you don't want that, but just to make sure they're passing lessons and like they're actually doing those, I think is helpful, because that's one easy thing that students can do at home.
Yeah, totally.
But a lot of parents are like, I have no idea how to even get logged into that. So even like a grade book and things, just making sure they have access to all of that. In middle school more so than anything, but because you want to check those grades that way. If there is a D or an F in middle school, you're like, hey, you talk to your student and be like, is it because you're not doing your work? Do you not understand? Like, what can we do? Reach out to the teacher to see if they can support.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the last thing is read plans. Usually that's in the fall conference, where you want to make sure if a kid has a read plan, you go through that as well.
Right.
To show like, this is what I'm doing in the classroom. They're meeting with me, 4 times a week for 30 minutes, whatever it is, 30 minutes. And we're working on this goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And then going off that, if they have an advanced learning plan, I think you should also be bringing that up at conferences as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else with parent-teacher conferences?
I don't think so, except for just to say, like, I think if a student works with like a reading interventionist or a math interventionist or a special education service provider, like inviting those people into your conferences. But also I remember as a teacher, like having to be really clear with, you can only talk for 2 minutes because I have 10 minutes for this conference.
That is true.
You can talk at the end. And then if you need to continue the conversation with the parent, like you guys can go somewhere else.
Yes. Yeah. Because it goes so fast.
Yeah. You have to be really, especially when lots of people come in to talk.
And that's a good point right there, is making sure you're within your time frame. I know it might sound rude, especially when you're new and you're like trying to wrap it up, but it's okay to be like, I'm so sorry, we only have 10 minutes scheduled. If you want to continue this, could we schedule another time or a phone call? But yeah, the last thing you want to do is back up, and then, the last 2 people don't get their time with you, or you're there till 8, and that's not fair to anyone. So
no. And then the other thing is, if you have conferences that you think are going to be tricky, you have parents that might not be happy with you, or you have a behavior issue that's like serious, invite either admin or the dean into your conference. And I've done that several times because I just didn't feel comfortable being alone with the parents. For sure. And I was like, this is going to be a tricky conversation, and I need support. Yeah. That support is available for you.
Yeah. And it's okay even during your conference if you can tell it might be getting, south, and you're like, oh gosh, okay. It's okay to be like, you know what? I think I'm going to radio admin for some of these questions that you have. And then if they're not available, again, just saying, hey, can we schedule this with our admin team? Because I think they would be better able to answer some of your questions. Yeah. Totally fine.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And just finish with your part, but it's okay to say we need to reschedule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. But I think at the end of the day, I think both parents and teachers want what's best for that student. So it's trying to find a way to build that partnership and work together, honestly.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I think parent-teacher conferences are exhausting. And I think going into them, I'm always like, oh, God. But after the end of each one, I'm always like, that was so great. Like, I loved meeting the families of the students. And then, like, also when the kid's there and then you, like, say something positive and you just see the face light up. Like, it's just...
And then the parent gives them, like, a little hug.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they, like, show their, like, space. Like, this is where I, like,
this is where I sit. Yeah. They're so excited.
So I do like parent-teacher conferences, even though
they're just long.
Just exhausting.
Yeah. Especially when you think it's, like, a 12-hour day and you've had students all day. So it's a lot. So if you have a partner at home, again, treat them well when they get home.
Treat them like it's the first day of school.
Yes. Yeah. Dinner should be made because you're tired by the time you get home.
Hopefully your school provides dinner for you.
Yes. Most do nowadays. So they'll find a way to get like a free dinner, which is so nice. And if not, if you own a restaurant, think about donating to a school for parent-teacher conferences.
And then also when you're scheduling your conferences, make sure you schedule yourself a dinner break.
Yes. Yeah, you need a little break in between. Use the restroom. Yes, because it can be a lot for sure. All right. That kind of sums it up.
Okay. Well, if you are embarking on parent-teacher conferences soon, we wish you all the best.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.